everyone, and welcome back to Mining Network. So I'm joined with Dan Dixon from Endeavour Silver Corp. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolute pleasure. So let's start by getting a nice overview of the company.
Yeah, Endeavour Silver, we're a silver producer with assets in Mexico. We've been built kind of through the drill bit in the past and ultimately found by exploration geologists. We have two operating mines right now in Mexico, the NYSE mine, which is about 70% of our production, and the Bolañitos mine, which is the remaining amount. And ultimately, we're produced about 8 million silver equivalent ounces this year, which is similar to prior year. But our big story and what's important to the company right now is our Terronera project, which is just outside of Puerto Vallarta, similar to what we're doing at NYSE and Bolañitos, but we're looking to put that into production by the end of 2024.
Brilliant. We'll dive into those in a moment. Could you run me through your capital structure a little bit?
Yeah, we're listed on Toronto Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange. We have about 200 million shares outstanding. Our current market cap is about $700 million. Our balance sheet's in great shape. We have no debt on our balance sheet at this time, but we are looking to put some debt on in the coming months to help with the Terronera project build out.
So last month you released a Q3 financial report. Could you kind of run us through that a little bit?
Yeah, our Q3 was actually a pretty good quarter. We did see some inflationary costs come into our cost per ton, and ultimately we did all right because our grades were better than what we'd planned. So our cost per ounce worked out to be right in line with what our guidance would be. I'd say slightly above, maybe by 16, 17 cents. From an earnings standpoint, we had a loss for the quarter, and that's a reflection that we held back metal sales during the quarter. So we ended the quarter with about $35 million of bullion on our balance sheet, held at cost. When we sell that, that profit will come through, and ultimately it'll put us at a positive earnings for the year.
Brilliant. And you mentioned there a little bit about the guidance. Have you released a production guidance for 2023?
We haven't released production guidance for 23 yet. That will come out in January.
No problem. So with the inflation at the moment, your all-in sustaining costs have increased, of course. How have you managed to kind of cope with that and stay on target?
Yeah, we've been lucky a little bit. At NYSE, which is about 70% of our production, as I say, our grades have been better than planned. So the higher costs on a per ton basis have been offset by better grades. So on a per ounce basis, we're right in line with guidance. I think going forward, it's about trying to manage our costs as best we can. At the end of the day, inflation's in widgets. It's not like we can stop putting the inputs into our mine that we need. It's our job as management to find ways to either be more efficient or increase productivity, ultimately to get that cost per ounce or per ton to where we expect it to be.
Yeah, and how does the US dollar's performance affect your bottom line?
The US dollar performance for us, it impacts mostly the precious metals price, so silver or gold price. Most of our costs, or about 60% of our costs, is actually tied to the Mexican peso. In years past, when we've seen kind of the depression in prices or contraction in prices, we've seen the Mexican peso contract or depreciate against the US dollar. In this point of time, the US dollar, which has been one of the best performing currencies in the world, is actually underperformed compared to the Mexican peso. The Mexican peso is actually held in very well, so we haven't had that benefit on a cost standpoint. Maybe it will come, we'll see. I don't think lots has changed from a structural standpoint in Mexico that would suggest that we have a change in the trend of that peso to US dollar. And then obviously from the top line, from prices standpoint, silver and gold have been down a little bit because of the US dollar strength. If that changes or pauses, I expect ultimately the prices to be higher in the coming years. And then obviously that would go right to our bottom line.
Yeah. No, of course. So for those unfamiliar, let's now jump into your project a little bit. So obviously you've mentioned NYSE and also Bolañitos. Am I saying those right?
You're saying that perfectly.
Brilliant. So talking through the life of the mines there, the reserve size, and also a bit about the general geology of those projects.
Yeah, they're epithermal vein systems, silver and gold. So we only produce precious metals. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, NYSE, we've been there for 17 years now. We've never had more than a 2 to 3 year reserve life. It's just the characteristics of underground vein mining. Currently, we're probably sitting on about 3 years of reserves. We made a discovery at the end of 2019, October of 2019 is when we made that discovery. That's given us kind of 3 to 4 more years of reserves. If you look at it from a resource standpoint, maybe we're at 5 to 7 years. And there's exploration potential that's still there at NYSE. Bolañito's a little bit more mature. We've been there 16 years. Again, we've never had more than 2-year reserve life. As we've mined, we've replaced what we've depleted through conversion of resources into reserves. Right now, we're sitting about 2 years of reserves at Bolañito's. The runway's probably not as long at Bolañito's as we have at Guanaceví, maybe 3 to 5 years. And it's just a function of our concession boundaries, but there is a lot of exploration potential that still remains at Bolañito's. Some are concessions held by other groups, always working to try to put those into our portfolio and extend that mine life. But ultimately, from a consolidated basis with Guanaceví, Bolañito's, our Terronera project, and Parral, which is another exploration project, we have about 225 million ounces defined in the ground, plus our Pitarrilla project that we recently acquired.
So Terronera is fully permitted. So talk me through the economics there and the timeline of the project, and also how it kind of affects Endeavour as a whole, like the potential.
Yeah, I mean, for us, Terronera is a cornerstone project for us, and ultimately will be our flagship project. It's got a 12-year mine life that we define 1,700 tons per day. It'll produce, on average, just under 6 million silver equivalent ounces over that 12 years. And ultimately, the thing that makes Terronera special is its operating cost profile. So using $20 silver and $15.75 gold, its cash cost is 59 cents per ounce of silver. All-in sustaining costs over the life of the mine over the 12 years is $3.25. So literally puts us in the lowest decile from an all-in sustaining cost standpoint amongst our peer group. The overall build cost is $175 million. That will be spent over 2 years. That came out in our feasibility study July of 2021. Over the last year, we've been looking at optimizing that. We have seen some inflationary costs come in. So ultimately, I think once we get project loan financing put in place, which is debt, $80 to $100 million we've been working on, the rest will come from our balance sheet, which is in great shape. We have over $100 million of working capital at the end of Q3. And we're fully permitted, as we've talked about, as you noted. There is some little amendments to permits, and we expect fully to have those relatively soon. Those amendments are mainly from an operating standpoint. It gives us more flexibility operating. So if we can get this formal construction decision put in place here relatively shortly, we should be in production by the end of 2024. Again, very good economics, close to a 20% IRR using the $20 silver, $15.75 gold. I think the main takeaway is its operating cost profile.
Brilliant. But talk me through, so you've got a 41 million development budget at the moment. How will that be spent? I'm guessing on Terronera. Could you break that down for me?
Yeah, so the Terronera build cost is $175 million, which is a 2-year timeline. This year we've budgeted $41 million for early works, detailed engineering, procurement on Terronera. We'll get that $41 million spent this year, which is great. We have our mobile fleet already on site, so 30 pieces of equipment, 12 key processing plant parts, filter press, ball mill, sag mill. They've all been ordered, and those will be delivered mid-year next year. So with regards to that 41, we've generally stayed right on budget. What we have in our feasibility study as well as what we're kind of been spending, so that's good. But once we make that formal construction decision, which we expect early next year, that'll really increase our budget for 2023.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was about to touch on the feasibility study, but I think you summed it up brilliantly there. So talk me through, you've also got an exploration budget of about 13 million. Yeah. So where is that going to be allocated and spent? Yeah,
our exploration budget's kind of spread pretty evenly amongst a bunch of projects. At Guanaceví, we're spending $1.5 million. Bolañito's, we're spending $1.5 million. We have exploration projects down in Chile as well. We'll spend $2 million there. We had a budget of $1.5 million for a Nevada project that we have, and then $2 million spent at Parral and a little bit spent at Terronera. So it's spread across. We've had very good success at Guanaceví and Parral this year from an exploration standpoint. We probably won't get the full $13 million spent this year, but we'll get close. We're pretty good. As I said early on, we're built through the drill bit. The company was founded by exploration geologists, and we like kind of things that we have to look at. I should add Pizzeria, we're probably going to spend another close to $1.8 million this year.
Yeah, you recently acquired that just a few months ago, didn't you?
We did. We closed that in July. It's one of the world's largest undeveloped silver deposits. Our predecessors, SSR Mining, they're the ones that discovered it, and they defined close to 550 million ounces of silver plus lead and zinc. So right now we're verifying all that data so we can put it out as a current resource under Canadian 43-101 guidelines. Once that comes out, our expectation it'll be somewhere around that 550 million and effectively almost triple our resources in the ground that we have currently.
Brilliant. So will you be using any of that budget to extend the life of mine of your existing operating assets?
Yeah, the 1.5 million for Guanaceví and Bolañitos, both that's designed to just bring either resources into reserves or convert potential into resources. So as I say, this year at Guanaceví, we've had very good results. Put out 2 different press releases, very high grade, good widths. Some of those areas that we've been drilling will come into the mine plan for next year. And at Bolañitos, we've had not the same success, but we've had some success. So adding kind of 3 months to 6 months worth of resources, but similar grades to what we're seeing right now at our mine. So there's still work to be done at Bolañitos, and that will continue. And we'll have a budget for Guanaceví. We'll have a budget for Bolañitos in 2023. That's just part of the underground vein mining. As we mine, we replace through the drill bit.
Yeah, and is your plan to grow organically, or is there kind of space for mergers and acquisitions to kind of further things?
Yeah, I mean, this year with acquiring Pizzeria, it was $70 million, $35 million in cash, $35 million worth of shares. We don't want to get too thin, but at the same time, we want to continue to look for opportunities to be able to add cash flow and be able to add growth to our portfolio. I think the work that we've done this year, it's been really good. It doesn't mean that we're done. There's things that are still could add a lot of value, and we think we could add value to it, but it takes time from an M&A standpoint. Of course, I think a good plan and a good approach for any mining company is organic growth and M&A growth. Sometimes organic growth can take a long time, but you get a lot of value add for shareholders through organic growth, through the drill bit. And again, as a company that's been around for 16 years and really grown through the drill bit, that'll always be a fabric of who we are.
Yeah, for sure. And how is your stakeholder relationships and the general sort of view of mining in the area?
Yeah, I mean, it's Mexico, so there's a long history of mining there. There's a little town by Guanaceví called Guanaceví. We have great relationships. We've been there 16 years now. I think we've done a lot of things from a sustainability standpoint for that little town of, I think when we arrived, it was like 6,000 people. Now we're close to 15,000 people in that town. Bolañitos, there's a little town called La Luz. Again, they're neighbors. They're literally right near our mine. And we have good relationships there. And we've taken a lot of what we've learned with community relations over the last 15 years. And we've applied that at Terronera over the last 6-7 years. And again, there's a little town called Santiago de los Pinos right near us. Very supportive of the mine, very supportive of all the activity that's happening there. And as we go through from an exploration project at Terronera to development project to operating, there's going to be different issues that arise that we think we can deal with just because of the teams that we have in place.
Brilliant. And I saw on your presentation that last year you posted about your sustainability highlights, but also you've got a 3-year plan there. Could you kind of break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, our 3-year plan is really simple. It's about the planet, people, and our business. Mm-hmm. It's something, like I say, we've always kind of taken pride in since we've been in Mexico. We've always brought our Canadian standards and from an environmental standpoint, from a labor standpoint to Mexico. I think we've done a really good job at the beginning of this year to define a 3-year plan. One of the programs that we have at Guanaceví is putting in a better well system for better drinking water for that town, and that's almost complete. A lot of the engineering's done. We'll get really started on the next part. There's a water treatment plant that's been put in place now at Guanaceví, and I think that's just important about being a good neighbor, operating as with integrity, kind of in our space. Sometimes mining takes a bad rap, and it's an easy target. Especially right now in Mexico, there's a lot of rhetoric around Canadian mining companies coming in and taking resources from the Mexican people, and it bothers you some to hear that because it's just not true. I mean, we're governed under NAFTA. I think, like I say, all the standards we've brought down from Canada have been improved on Mexico, and ultimately I think that's good for them. But we try to do the best we can and operate as people and operate with integrity at our mines and at our exploration projects.
Definitely, no, that's great to hear. So looking at Mexico as a whole, obviously we've seen the government nationalize the lithium industry. How did you see kind of in your shareholders, investors, did you see a shift in them since then, in their sentiment since that decision?
Yeah, a lot of questions around that. They also try to take the oil industry public, which hasn't gone well, and they've re-privatized part of that. And I think that's just the change of the government 4 years ago. AMLO's government's got another 2 years, and I think their government's actually going to get in for another term. Not that AMLO can get in, but it's part of the stuff that we need to manage. And it's not that they've changed the taxes. It's not that they've changed mining laws. So we're still operating in the same paradigm that we were 4 years ago. But it's managing that message to the communities, managing that message to our shareholders. I think for us, it gives us a lot of confidence in Mexico as it is part of our North American Free Trade Agreement. So it's not like they can nationalize the silver and gold space. I think lithium, for a number of reasons, is why they've nationalized that for protection. And I'm happy that we don't work in the lithium space for that reason in Mexico. And I don't think it's going to percolate its way into gold and silver in Mexico, to be honest.
No, thank you. And so just a nice way to kind of summarize, talk me through, as a company, what are you most proud of over the past 12 months achieving?
Oh, over the last 12 months, there's a number of things that we're proud of. I think first and foremost that comes to mind is our safety record and safe production. I took over as CEO of May of 2021 and really tried to focus on our internal culture, making sure that our production's safe and our employees understand that if they see something that's not safe, they can step back. And it's not always about just production, it's about safe production. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to produce. Safety is very important, but we can do it smartly and ultimately continue to produce. So we call it safe production. And our record, we did about 2.5 million man hours at Guanaceví without an LTI, without a long-term incident. So injury. And ultimately, that's very important to us as a company. I think from a strategic standpoint, how we've been able to advance Terronera is very important. And then that Pitarrilla acquisition for us is going to be critical. I think it really pairs well with our existing mines in Terronera and into the growth story of what Endeavour is. And with bringing Terronera online, we can get to about 15 million ounces of silver production. And then our goal is to be a senior silver producer. So that's kind of getting into the 25 million ounce silver equivalent range. Pitarrilla gets us there if that can go as we expect it to go. There's some work to be done, but I really think that really changes the profile of Endeavour Silver going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've mentioned a few things there, but if you could pick one or two key catalysts to look out for over the next 12 months, what should it be?
Yeah, obviously the positive development decision fully on Terronera, and that's predicated on putting debt financing in place. We're looking for $80 to $100 million, kind of so to speak. Like I say, I expect that relatively shortly and that announcement. And I really think the market will look to see where we are from a budget timeline standpoint and costs, and that will be late next year, which we'll be able to probably give a good indication of where we end up. That's the biggest catalyst for us. I mean, the fact that what Terronera does to our cost profile, it takes us from mid the pack to right at the front. And Terronera itself is one of the lowest cost producing mines amongst our peer group for silver mines. If we can get that in production, it completely changes kind of our profile and the margins that we get. It's going to be one of the best margin mines in the space. So I think that gives us a nice little NAV multiple or a re-rating, so to speak. And then just continue to advance Pitarrilla would be the next catalyst with that.
Well, I look forward to following along with it. Thank you so much for your time today, Dan.
No, thanks for having me. I much appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.